Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's discussion for chapters 8. Oh Lord, let me remind myself how many. There were four chapters: 8.83 to 8 to the epilogue of Volume 8. We're finally done. It's over. It's over, everybody. We've gotten to it. There was so much to talk about. So much happened. There was a roller coaster. Aaron's back. Terriarch didn't do enough. That's my opinion. We'll get to it. So we're going to start this off very quickly with some first impressions, and we have a few pre-typed up responses. I'm going to read them off in a second, but Blue Juice is hosting with me. I'm hosting. This is Oshi, just in case anybody doesn't know. But Blue Juice, what was your first impression of... Sorry, not even your first impression. What did you think of this roller coaster ride the pirate wrote?
Hello, everybody. I thought it was, well, I mean, a roller coaster is a pretty good analogy. There's a lot of dips and starts, and you do get back to the station at the end of the chapter there with the epilogue, and even knowing that you think that you're going to get to the destination safely with the revival, like the whole overarching promise of the volume. It's one of those things where you never really quite believe that you're going to get there. So it was, I think it was really, really emotional and a very nice way to tie everything together. I like that that wasn't front and center as well. That really had every other character arc, the things that were most important in the volume got a chance to shine and somehow do it all at once. It helps that there's 68,000 words, which is actually longer than most dime store novels. So they had the room to let those events grow. So I really enjoyed it.
I'll read off these in a second, but I'm going to turn it around. There was chatter on Reddit that I talked about in the prior discussion for Pats Only, and it was uh, people liked it, but there was always these caveats and things about how it felt a little like Avengers, like the Avengers movie, and the end. It was very like everything comes together in this pat way, and there was commentary about how they didn't quite enjoy it, and of course, so much pushback on the fact that Aaron didn't get levels, and then there was all the meanness about that.
A horrible compliment or a horrible consideration. We only think that it is like the highest grossing film of all time, okay?
Yeah, I mean, it's just Marvel like, but there was some uncomplimentary words about it being a little bit too much of a fan fictiony ending. I'm bringing this up as a counterpoint to all the positive. It did feel, even Pirate admitted in the author note at the end of the volume, that it was a lot. Like volume
Let me
8 was
let me
heavy.
put it to you this way. It could be worse. We could have been having people compare it to the ending of Mass Effect 3 rather
Oh
than the
my
Avengers
god,
ending.
could you imagine?
Yeah, if you have a difficult task of having to thread together at this point, so the volume I think total was it 2 million words?
I
So
think
like
so.
it's essentially this volume this past year has been a quarter of the story so far. And they've had to do that without who you would consider the protagonist, while still making them feel present enough that it didn't completely write out that that whole portion of the narrative and then make that feel like it was a good choice and make that feel like it was something that was worth the time that you're inputting into it. So that's a really difficult thing just on its head. And then you have to thread all of the different plot threads that came up for this particular volume, but you're doing it at the Newt, which is something that has happened for literally 7 volumes has been promised, and then all these other little moments that were also 7 volumes in the making. So
I think that was part of the critique, is that it was just too long, too much, too much, too much. Okay, but let me read some of these wonderful comments from our participants. And if anybody would like to come up and speak and say their piece, please ping us. I would love to hear from you guys. Uh, Liquid Ender says, my main question is whether or not Artur and 57 survived. The only ants who are mentioned as surviving were the Buried. We'll ask that later. Ren says, Gah! I'm so happy! Quest! Uh, Ashok says, I was so looking forward to Aaron getting a new advanced innkeeper class or reaching level 50, but I suppose the witch class and the quests are great too. Tina says, I wanted better reunions with Eren, but that's just what happens when they're all booked at the same time. Maybe the beginning of 9 will devote more words to it. Assume volume 9 is what they're referring to. Um, so I picked out a comment from Reddit to read. Y'all, I hope you guys don't mind. So Goose3691 says, I've been waiting a bit to say this and take everything for its ending and as a complete picture, but this one was too long. And I don't mean this chapter, I mean the volume. I adore The Wandering Inn, and it's been a fantastic ride, but this is the first volume where the changes felt too big, the momentum too slow. Pirate themselves said that going for more words this volume was a conscious decision. I think it's one that, while worthwhile personally, it sounds like maybe shouldn't be how they proceed moving forward. But what do I know? Pirates built a universe, a following, and a book series. Those are enormous accomplishments, and more than I have done. All I know is that this volume was the first to feel like work at times, and I'll be slightly more wary jumping into the next. Pirate can keep being delightful, and I'm sure people will follow. Spanner says, it was glorious. Reddit can go suck on an egg. Oh, well, suck on an onion. Why not an egg?
Onions have layers.
Dell says, I do not consider my ship fulfilled as of yet. Insufficient hugs.
Then
Okay.
just to the point of the actual length. So Bookworm has a citation here from NeoCities. So this is just counting the everything on the site. So it includes the author notes and everything else. That is 2,794,186 words. That is a lot of words.
I'm looking for some. Can you take over for just a little bit? I'm looking for a couple of other things, and then I'll come back.
Trouble at all. In fact, we had a couple of comments, like I said. So please keep those coming. And then we'll get to some of the general questions as well. We have a list right now. It's about 17, but we can actually add more to the document as well. Like Oshi said at the beginning of the recording, it's in the audio announcements channel here. You'll see that there is a link to the Google Doc, and you can add inputs there, or you can, again, type questions or any kind of comments here in the audio chat recorded channel. And then general discussions can go in the audio chat. So anything that you want to pass along. And we've got some more coming in right now. So Yash is saying, I'm a duck. If Pirate wanted it longer, I would have devoured it like a seam walker. So maybe the devourer is the self-insert for all the readers. I don't know. Kel is saying that they do not. I think Oshi may have already read this one, but I'm going to say
I
that
read that one.
consider the ship fulfilled yet because the insufficient hugs. I want to share that sentiment. That is a very good sentiment to have.
Mm. Okay. Okay. I found the thread that had me thinking about things. Okay. You know what? Never mind. There's no point in talking about it. So let's would anybody would like to speak? Anyone?
So essentially, the question that was put forward there in the thread is just how do people feel about all the events? So, do you feel as though that they were given enough time to breathe, or because they've been built up so long over the period of time, because the volume was as long as it was, that they didn't quite land because they only had this period of time? So that seems to be the way that the criticism was being framed, and just to see how any of you guys feel about that. Do you think that that it would have been better if some of these moments had stood alone and so been a little bit shorter? Or do you think that the way that it was set up, kind of like Avengers Endgame, was the comparison, was actually a good way to present the finale? All right, we have our first person to chime in. Go ahead, Rosie.
So this is something that I'm still working on, and I might eventually write about it. But I think for me, especially with this in mind in your end game and people being like, "Oh, it's very fan fiction," is I kind of see that more as comparing it to an epic. Because to me, the whole, I mean, the sequence of like all of these characters together on the battlefield, all of this happening, which just brought me straight back to the Iliad and the Odyssey, and studying that in Latin and all of those forms of storytelling. And so I think part of what's really hard to consider the Wandering in is the style itself does feel like very casual fantasy, but its scope, its characters, the way it's telling its story is much more closely related to an epic. And I think that was way more clear in this volume without Aaron to bring it down to earth. So I don't know what to do with that yet, but for me, that's kind of where I'm trying to figure out where my expectations of this fits with the fact that this whole volume was really its own epic within the epic of the story, and that I feel like completely changes how I see it. And I think is why you can't always consider it in the same breath as like a 300-page story, which I think the whole entire last 3 chapters is longer than that.
That is a great comment. And then we have another person, Yash, chiming in, wanting to reply, and we are happy to have you.
Yo, okay, so when I consider entertainment as a consumer of drama and too many Bollywood movies, we think about return on investment. If I'm reading something, if I'm putting in the time, if I want to escape to somewhere mediocre, give me everything. Like, and that's why I'm very happy with Pirates ending and what she's done in this book because she gave everything and more. She, he, they, whatever they describe as, whatever they identify as. But as a hardcore Bollywood fan, I would say Pirate has gone above and beyond everything I imagined in my wildest dreams. I got romance, I got action, I got drama, I got comedy. What else is there? Like, there's really no way to top this, in my opinion.
Fantastic. I don't think that that's a bad opinion to have. I was pretty hyped. So just to be clear, if it didn't say it at the beginning, extremely hyped about the actual ending for the chapter and for the volume as well. So we got a couple more people typing as we are getting the discussion going along here. And again, anyone is free to chime in. We've got a few posts from Oshi here from Reddit, so just sharing some more thoughts in a more long form way. So we can have them read that when they get back. But
I'm here.
Or-
I'm giving you some. So we had HolyChicken, who's actually a member of Discord and was not able to show up to either of the discussions, but they did post on Reddit, talk about this, one of their reactions to the end thing. And it was, so there is a Reddit thread, and it starts off with thoughts on Volume 8's last arc, and this is HolyChicken's response to that. I commented this on the epilogue discussion thread, but I am super unsatisfied with TWI's role in insert number of chapters plus epilogue. The ending of 8.83 Part 3 with TWI flying out of his cave represented a complete paradigm shift of him from his up to Volume 8 personality of an old, world-weary dragon who is simultaneously aware of the disproportionate power a dragon holds in the waning world, afraid of being too entangled among mortals, and extremely risk-averse, hesitant of interacting too much in the world for fear that he might be slain. The last line of 8.83, TWI spread his wings and flew, is simple and elegant in and of itself, while also drawing contrast to him in 7.25, saying how a dragon shouldn't fly without being prepared to die. For someone who just died, met a bunch of ghosts, including those dear to him, and resurrected within a span of what seems like minutes to hours in in-world time, the ending of 8.83 Part 3 gave the massive expectation that we'd be seeing TWI in his entirety influencing the world in the final chapter, flying out of his cave in earnest and with full resolve. Yet we have practically zero to no TWI in the end of the volume, except for him having a bunch of conversation with Rafema/Lucifer, who weren't elaborated in blowing 1,000-foot stream of dragon fire onto Bella, which, mind you, was epic. But I think it's a massive letdown compared to the cliffhanger and built-up expectations that was 8.83 Part 3. That was a lot to read. But I point this out because it was a shared response from myself. I honestly thought TWI was underused for the last part. I don't know if anybody else thought it, but that was my reaction as well. And I figured HolyChicken had a more interesting response than mine. I want more TWI. That's where
I think we've officially transitioned from the general thoughts into the more breakdown for things that we wanted to talk about here. So that's probably our first question. We've got Yash chiming in now. Are you replying?
Let's read out Lynette
Yeah.
and Web hold on. Let me read out Lynette and Webwoman's response, and then you go ahead and speak, Yash. So Lynette says we essentially had our quote unquote chapter that posted when Pirate said it would post, and then Pirate looked at all 68,000 words and decided to break it up into 4 different posts. This is all a good call because each break off point was a good place to break it. But waiting 4 days before we got to the next one would have killed us and broken the wild ride that had to be experienced in one huge rush. I want to thank Pirate so much for writing what was essentially 4 chapters for us in that time frame and trying to include all the threads that drew to southern Israel. We are all eternally grateful, and I'm positive we don't deserve it. I just wanted to read that because it was very nice. Go ahead, Yash.
Okay, so this is about Terry. Now, I've been thinking, Terry is probably one of the last 5 or last 6, 7 dragons in the world, right? If he suddenly makes himself known, if he suddenly becomes a target, we know that the drakes are petty motherfuckers. Let's say they want to let's say they want to revive the walled cities. Let's say they want to make another walled city. And they say, oh, here we go, a dragon with a bunch of dragon bones in it. Let's kill it and make a walled city. Like, it doesn't make sense, right? So I think I think Pirate was very careful with what Teriyak was doing. And I think she knew that if at this point she made a big impact out of it, there are more loopholes than not. Like Terry is placed in such a way that him, causing big waves and being out there in the story and making a very large impact on the story would probably not work in the few, like not work story wise, because there's a lot of things that are detriment. I'm not finding the right words, but it won't work with the story, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Ren, in response to Polaric's comment, says regarding Polaric's comment, Terry also stabilized the ritual at the end with as. Um, Webwoven says I agree a lot with Yash about the sheer breadth of the volume and finale. It kind of felt like it needed to be this long because it was literally everything. In previous volumes, we had major characters mostly absent, just as a necessity of the amount of characters there was as a whole. In volume 8, who's missing? Tom and Flora? I think literally every other character and plotline was developed. Bookworm says, I doubt it because it seems like they are raising Rafema and Cyrodiil as future leaders of the Drakes, not for materials. This is in response to Yash. Okay, I think that's everything, Blue. Um, there's a couple of people still typing, but I think we can just move on from first impressions unless somebody has anything else to say.
Yeah, we had direct questions that some. I'm just going to see if any of these relate to some of what was brought up there about kind of the plot points. One of the first one that we had in the doc was actually relating to just the plot threads that are a part of volume or things that we think will go forward in volume 9, and do we think that things got resolved well enough? So
Let's do the discussion topic. I think we'll start with the first one you came up with.
So just like if we're gonna keep it on just like general discussions for a minute before we get to the questions, like I said, you can still add to that doc, and again, that's gonna be in the audio announcements chat area.
There is a direct link to the Google Doc. Please, we welcome all questions, and we'll get to as many as we can.
Yeah, if we just keep it on just like general discussion for the moment, the thing that I was interested in is just seeing how people think or what happens to Kelt after this. So they have this giant buildup. We have essentially this character who has been set up as I think he's my favorite now. And I didn't think that was going to be a thing that would happen in Volume 8. But I think Fidohep might actually have taken the throne from Relk and Aaron as my favorite character in the entire story. Just seemingly very, very kind-hearted, altruistic character that is kind of that's one of the things that draws me to this story is those kind of characters, and just this embodiment of sacrifice and selflessness, while also being quite cheeky and having their own agendas as well. And so he's not just a one-dimensional White Lotus character, and also he's an undead. How freaking cool is that? But now he's going to be the king of this kingdom with all of his predecessors and all of the citizens in the Deadlands completely gone. So what does it mean to be the king of Celt Eternal if there is no eternity anymore? I'm really perplexed. And I thought that when his eyes started dimming in the chapter, I totally thought Pirate was going to pull the chair out from under us and that we were going to say goodbye to Bone Daddy. So, or Bone Grandpa. I do not know.
Okay. First
So there's
off,
just a lot there, a lot to process, I know, but just saying that would be my general thing. Is I just wanted to see how people think the whole Celt storyline goes forward, and it cannot be that they have more in the vaults necessarily to help progress the plot. So it'll have to be Celt that is a little bit poorer.
okay, hang on, Blue Juice. First off, I'm going to respond for all the crazy people who love Aaron so much and go like, "Sir, be gone! How could Aaron ever be replaced?" There, I said it for all of you. I'm with you. I actually think Fedorhub is one of the best developed characters of Volume 8. I do wish we had a little bit more characterization based on his past, but you take with the good with the bad, and there's only so far you can go. As far as Celts being impoverished, no. I'm sure Celt burned through a lot of its resources, and it certainly took a huge hit in the loss of the Revenants as a sort of check against disaster. Those things are not replaceable, and they've lost a great deal of resources. But it's it's clear that the success of the ritual will likely increase the power of the mages involved in the ritual. Everybody who became part of Kelt's final drive will grow. The Gnolls who will end up in Chandron, not all of them. I don't think most of them will want to go with Close. They'll go with Battlehead because he explicitly put himself out there. Kelt showed in a world stage that one, they are a power, and two, they are I don't know, a beneficent power. They did defeat a bunch of people, show a lot of ability. They could have wiped out entire kingdoms, but they never do it. They're just there. And instead, the one time he acted was to end a conflict and stop what seems to have been the waking of a disaster. Essentially, acting as he always said. They presented themselves as an honorable and powerful kingdom. I don't think Celt is diminished at all. I do think, as an existential crisis, they are going to have to deal with the fact that there is no afterlife. Right? You're right. Let's see what else. Does anyone else have any comments? Not a webwoven pinged me and said the term I'm looking for is benign. No, benign would imply that they don't do anything good or bad. They're just there. Beneficent is the word I'm looking for because it means that they act positively. Um, Spanner. Okay, that sounded like such a dick thing to say, but yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Spanner says, given that Kelt rang the Dragon Bell, I doubt they won't get reparations for all of this. What do you mean by reparations, Spanner?
Sorry, the chat. Basically, Celts have spent a lot of money to effectively save the world in some aspect. They were the ones who rang the bell. They were the ones who got people on board with it. Wistrom, who I'm sure will come later, tried to be like, nah, Celts off on one ear until Drath and like 7 other kingdom must have went, let's listen to Celt's ear. So I can't see Celt not getting something back out of it in terms of wealth or even like increasing their soft power, if nothing else. That they will get something out of this.
You think they'll like start paying them the same way they do Rochelle? Like save us from things, we'll give you money?
No, I don't think that. I think given the amount of wealth that Celt spent in order to save people, they'll get something back out of it. Whether it comes in terms of money or whether it comes in terms of potentially refugees, the Gnolls going over there or what, I don't know. But I think Celt's gonna come out of this more positive than they'll get any
Okay.
negative press from it.
So Agent Fog says Niers has to rebuild, Fenohab has to organize all the new lands, and Aaron has to send someone to gather some herbs or something. I'm not sure what that's referring to, but okay.
That's the quest for Volume 9. That's a
My
fairly
quest system.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
A Mystical Pie says, I think Kelt's biggest loss is the revenants that fell. I agree with you. Kuki says, with the loss of the revenants and resources like the potions of regeneration, it's likely that some of the nations that surrendered to Kelt during his charge, Federhap's charge, will try to regain their independence or get revenge like Medan. Do you really think so? I mean, considering they still have massive skeleton armies.
I'm actually surprised by that he is even alive. We still have Purik in the story of all
I
things.
know, like, is he still around? I don't think so. Anyway, Bookworm says, I doubt Kelt will get that much support due to them being a necrocracy.
You did say it correctly. It just sounds weird.
It does sound very weird. Mr. Europe says, Kelt already had all the soft power they need through Fedhap's old grandpa calls to Wistrom News. Oh, I mean, yeah. Okay. I need to spend a second to say the spanner. I didn't want that. Not they are beneficial, not generous. There's a different. It literally has an entirely different meaning to it. Oh my god. We're arguing over munificent and beneficent. Hermit in response, no, Akagi says, I feel like most of the undead legions were used in the siege on Actilios, and they did get nuked to hell by the stored walled city spells. This is true. There was a lot of like used up resources. One trying to contain Actilios, another in fueling the spell. Kalmia, we can hear your. I guess we could mute yourself. And trying to fuel the gate thing, and then in sending over the resource. I don't know. Maybe they have a lot, but maybe they don't.
So I will not make you read the puns if you don't want to, but we have a pun and a reply.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Oh, don't forget Lynette's thing to end it all.
so we have, to be fair, Aaron needed some time from Hermit. And then Bookworm replied, what a sage idea.
You all can go just kill yourselves.
Uh,
Okay, that was harsh. I shouldn't have said that.
So we did. They Bookworm had a rejoinder as well about resources that were spent. Talking about the fact that they had also used resources to attack Actelio Salash. So that included the end of the Scourge Riders. I think that's covered with the Revenants, but that was a particularly nasty thing of Revenants. I don't think that we really expected. That was literally biological warfare, and one of the scarier things that.
It was like poisoning, though. It was pretty. It's pretty obvious that they came up with some kind of knockout poison, and the thing is still alive. Like, I mean, the theme is just buying time, right, Blue?
Yeah, they didn't kill it by any means, and they didn't think that they were going to, but to quiet it. But even so, I'm just saying, like they had an entire team of biological weapons specialist undead, which is pretty scary now that you think about it. So maybe I'm actually quite glad that they're not in the story. And
Yeah.
I think that also underscores your point of like they're not benevolent, they're beneficent. They're they're not they're not the don't cross them.
So, keeping going with this discussion, do we have any questions in the participant questions for about Chandrar or Kelt? Well, here's one from Mr. Europe. What are the revenant half giants of Kelt going to do in Israel now that they no longer see Kelt as home? What the hell are you talking about?
Oh, well, yeah, we have at the end of the story, we have Salui who goes and unfortunately decides that he's going to be a one-man army against Eris, which does not end well. But all the other ones leave. They do not go home with Fenohep. And
Yeah,
they're
Mr. Europe. What other half giants?
The half-giant revenants. We have Hekrelin. We have the Vizier flying off in tears. We have Salui going to attack Xeris, but the half-giant revenants are also mentioned as not seeing Kelt as home anymore. And they didn't fly off, so presumably they're just sitting around in a field in Israel doing something. Maybe they're going to start working at the inn or something. I don't fucking know.
I always got the impression that one, they did go back to Kelt, but they didn't stay in Kelt, or two, they died. Like they didn't all. Am I
They
wrong?
didn't die.
Gorm posted the actual quote from the epilogue, and it does make it seem as though they did not go home with Veto because they looked home and decided that's not us.
Huh. For those who are listening in, however, the Vizier Hekraloon did not sail with Fenohep. He had felt Kelt to die, and he and the half-giants of Sarept had looked back at their kingdom and found no home there. Hekraloon flew away from Israel, screaming curses and weeping for his beloved queens. Yeah, it looks like the half-giants also, like, went away. I can't, we don't know where they are. That's a good question. What do you guys think they're gonna do?
Personally, or should I speak?
Yeah, you're good. It's your question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Personally, I think that, or I'm hoping that they somehow end up joining Goblin Home, because that would be absolutely ridiculous. And after some of the stuff we've seen in the high passes, they kind of desperately need some more firepower anyway.
They might chill out and have a drum session with the ogres or the trolls.
That would be pretty cool, wouldn't it? Mm. If they did stay on Israel, though, they'd probably be a power. But I feel like, why would they stay on Israel? They go back to Chandrar, but they wouldn't go back to with Fenohep. I mean, I don't know. It just doesn't feel right for them to stay on Israel, far from home again. Maybe it is a new start, but they are revenants. What would what would they have? What would their goal be? I mean, wow, just leaving them on Israel seems like such a bad idea. That especially because Israelis don't like the undead so much. So Yash says seems like every king queen of Kelt has a revenant sidekick. Do we have a potential Fedo revenant sidekick? Remember, go ahead, please.
Oh, I was going to say, I'd go ahead and comment, but I actually have a response to that as well. I was going to chime in.
Yeah, I was gonna say, isn't all of his buddies who died before they could become revenants the ones that were supposed to be his sidekicks?
He's making friends now. I feel like Trey and a couple of other folks, like some of these people that he is hanging out with now, are people that would potentially make good sidekicks for him or for the next ruler of Kelt. So I
Oh
think
my god, does that mean Trey will die? Blue Juice thinks Trey will die!
in the future, that's the thing.
Okay.
Like, you're not supposed to kick the bucket immediately. That was one of the reasons that his
No,
queen
he's
was
old
really
enough. Let's just slice some dice right now. Turn him into a revenant.
Hey,
That's it.
Trey is not gonna die before Teresa
I do.
dies.
I do. Just remember, raise your hand. But yeah, maybe you will. Ranaris, that would be pretty cool. Bookworm says a new start. Violet says move to Pomley, finding another person to follow. That sounds like a pretty good idea. Mystical Pie says find other half giants and teach them something. I believe the previous queen wasn't able to make Fedo's buddies sidekicks for some reason. Yeah, because they all died before anybody could get to them. Yasha says a. Go ahead.
It's also mentioned that they don't always get to do the revenant ceremony because you notice that they've opened up all these vaults, but they only had 5, I think, of the kings and queens of Kelt had left this particular group of revenants.
It was the oldest because they were the only ones who had people powerful enough to preserve. Yash says there's a bunch of death magic now. There might be a necrocracy forming among the Nulls, with Feshi leading.
What a
Spanner
twist!
with Feshi leading. Yeah. Spanner has a comment in response to that.
Yeah. Obviously, it says the chapters or the epilogue fighting over the land now, like drakes and that. But given the amount of death magic, the gate thing made out of the bone, the Fetohep summons, and the revenants being there, potentially, as Yash says, be a chance of more like Celt, like, you know how Celt's got something in Jakras, the little offshoot. There might be another one in Israel now, which might make moving back and forth potentially a bit easier. and if nothing else, it's somewhere the Revenants can chill out.
I don't think it's a permanent gate, is it? I thought it was only for that period of time.
I don't think it's permanent, but the amount of death magic won't disappear quickly. We've seen that with Azkarash's Tarandria stuff. Quite a lot of death magic still kicking about around there that wasn't.
Maybe. Okay, Lanrae says the half giants could join up to protect Feshi since she has the Serept dagger. That's actually a really cool idea, and Kel agrees, and so do I. Yash says, and an elemental died too. That's gotta add to it. That's true. There's a lot of mana flowing around. Who knows? I think that's Agent Fox says join the Half Seekers. That's not a bad idea either. Moore's around. Okay, so I think that covers your question, your discussion topic, Blues, if you're good with it.
Oh, we actually have one that's related to the Graven Passage since that came up. So
Go
they have
ahead.
discussion
Yeah.
questions here. So I'm going to steal this one from the doc. So it's another speculative one and pretty fun, which is which ghost do we think could have been wily enough to flee and survive the finale during the opening of the Graven Passage that created the mass of revenants? And what will they be getting up to?
Wait, which ghosts?
So yeah, like all the ghosts that came during the when they opened the passage, and all the revenants came through as part of the grand ritual. I think they mean the grand ritual rather than the Graven Passage, because that seemed to only transport the undead.
Yeah, I don't think that had any.
I get the point that they're trying to make there, and it's essentially the question. Like, so what do we think that they're going to have plans, and what are who do we think snuck through the passage or through the ritual to make their way to Israel, and are they going to have fun next volume?
Right. I mean, we know for a fact that, and I can prove it. We all know it's Naravia. Naravia survived. She put herself in a soul prison, and of course, Azkrash swiped her soul up, and whoever else would. We did see quite a few, like a mention of like certain soul objects exploding because they couldn't contain the souls. There's also the not insignificant chance that Regis Reinhardt might have saved a few people. Like, I honestly think Regis would have saved a few people, if only as servants for himself. He has to have backups in case his, ritual place where he's hiding gets exploded. So maybe he used one or two of the backups to seal up some ghosts. Spanner responds, Naravia, Mystical Pies, we know. Naravia and some slavers from Rashal survived, I think. And Spanner, you wanted to speak.
Yeah, no, well, whether it actually happened, I would like one of the Selfids who knew the spell to make a body from scratch survived, and maybe let the minds know, because I'm not going to talk about the wasting, but I have a feeling that might have something to do.
Cookie says, I'm surprised Belavier was too occupied with fighting to notice the mass influx of ghosts until she ran into Califer. I mean, she did notice that was a little bit of a plot hole, isn't it, Blues?
I think she was focused on the fighting, and then she noticed Ceres, and then she noticed Kelt's arrival. I don't think that any of the ghosts were on the battlefield until she commented about Kelt, and then at that point pushed away from her. So I don't think it's. I think the plot hole, if there is any, is just how quickly everything happened because of like the density of all the ghosts. Like we're actually intentionally swarming around Kelt to try and aid them as they're going to the battlefield. I cannot underscore the coolness factor of a ghost fleet. I was so jumped by that.
I think hold on. Okay, and there is one other participant question that deals with Fedorhep. Will we get to know, I don't know who asked this, so I can't bring them up, but will we get to know more about Sand at Sea's crew in the future, since they're the only revenants still with Fedorhep? I mean, it's the age of adventuring, and we have some pirates, revenants, and a pirate ship. I wonder what movie pirate could possibly be referencing. It's pirates.
Like Disney movies. You're in one.
Edu is okay. One Piece. It could totally be One Piece. You're absolutely right. It's One Piece. It's got to be One Piece. We're gonna have One Piece adventures with the people and the sand of the sea and whatnot. They're gonna go on. What's the the Flying Dutchman? Bookworm says the Flying Dutchman.
Hermit has chimed in, pointing about Belavier's observational skills. She did miss the dragon.
That's true. Well, technically, she saw the dragon. She did. She did say she saw an invisible dragon. She just didn't it. Didn't register right away until she took a second bet.
We have invoked Jack Sparrow gifts now.
Oh god, yeah. Gifts go in the other channel, folks. Webwoven says Webwoven Princess Vernu X Zern. For those who are here, wait. The sand at sea is probably the easiest way to get to the cloud sanctuary for the Nulls. How did I not realize this earlier? Good point. They could sand at sea could stick around and help the Nulls explore I mean, yeah, that and maybe somebody comes up with an airplane or something.
We do have the flying knoll, yeah.
Yeah,
We have
Bookworm.
a lot of knoll questions in the actual discussion chat. I'm curious about that. Like, there are people asking where the Plains Eye Knolls will go, or Plains Eye Knolls will go. Where do we think the knolls in general will go?
In the sky, you know what? It's an Earth moat. Violet says also a treasure map.
I have one about the giant city in the sky, surprisingly. That is one that I had almost forgotten about. I think if we take the accusation that there's a lot going on this chapter, it's a true accusation. There's enough going on this chapter that I forgot that there was a giant knoll city in the sky now.
Yeah, we'll get to that because I think we'll do topic by topic. I think I'm gonna wrap this one up. We talked about it for quite a while. Actually, we talked about it for a good 35 minutes. I'm going to move on to the second topic, since we're talking about flying Nulls. Before we get there, why don't we talk about the Nulls in general? So, a whole lot happened. I mean, technically, the last arc of the volume was about the Null moot and about the Nulls themselves. They've experienced an extreme tragedy, and I had this whole argument with people in the Patreon exclusive discussion, after chapter discussion, about how I think the Nulls have essentially been crippled as a people on Israel for the next few decades, and the Drakes have suffered no consequences for it. No significant consequences whatsoever. Meanwhile, the Nulls have lost some of their most powerful leaders. The Marsh, the Nulls from the what's the name? The Marsh tribe, whatever. The elements. Yeah, Coat is dead. The Garmarsh. Thank you. Garmarsh has lost their elemental. The center of gravity for some of the most like Asmozer is gone. Steelfur is gone. The largest and most powerful tribe that was essentially stealing everybody's luck and fucking with everything is now broken, and all their survivors are white Nulls, and they're splitting up all over the place. And they have all of this new land and all of these new places, but where are they gonna go? What are they gonna do? What's gonna happen? What do you guys think? Okay, Adu wants to speak. You're up. Unmute yourself, Adu.
Ah, damn it.
There you go.
I think I started. I said it the last time as well, the last discussion. Now that so many Nulls died, I think now they have many white Nulls, and with that comes a big catch-up mechanic or recovery mechanic. That's my opinion. The secret of the white Nulls, that they are not Doombringers, that they are not gonna hunt it down, is now they are able to work in the open. There are white Nulls who knows how to control the power. They can be taught. They can teach others. They can teach each other, and I think this could be a huge thing to not be so crippled. Or they're fighting. I mean, we already discussed if it's not the population that is crippled from the Nulls, but their power base. and they got a huge spike in the power base as well, or not. They didn't lose that much with all the white nulls.
Okay.
We've got a couple of people who have pinged to speak, so I was gonna.
Yeah, I'm gonna let people type up, but Mystical Pie, you want to speak?
Yeah, I think I also agree that the Knolls might have gained more than they lost because they were able to kind of get rid of a traitorous tribe, and they also, through all the stuff that happened in Nulmut, they were able to get a lot of new individuals that have a lot of potential to become very powerful in their own right, with all the white Knolls, with like Satar, and anyone else that may come up. So I think as they're going into the next era with access to things like Terriarch's book, they have a lot more potential to grow than they have in the past.
That's true. I'm gonna go through the comments and then I'll explain some of my own thoughts. Unless you have something, unless you want to read them, Blue.
Oh no, go ahead.
Okay. About the Drakes, so this is from Action Kermit. About the Drakes, civil war among the walled cities has been boiling for decades. I think it's about to break out. Kermit says, it's a flying city. Drakes can fly. Clearly, it belongs to the Drakes. Fuck Drakes. That last bit was for me. Violet says it feels that all the time spent in Nalmut was justified thanks to the last chapter. That's a good point. The last chapter really did sort of bring the Nalmut into focus, and it makes sense why it took so long to develop. Yash says, someone explain what happened with the land. Did, like, the land grow right in the middle of Israel, or did it grow like a pimple on the face of Israel? So, what happened essentially is that there were hidden kingdoms and places and things under the seafloor, and what the shamans did was split Israel and bring new land in, which immediately will be under conflict between the Drakes, and the Drakes will say that it's their land because it's next to their land and that's theirs, and then the Nulls will somehow have to keep it. I don't see how, but sure. There's all this new places, new adventures, new place that they needed. It was part of their wish, as it was described to me. In response to Agent Fogg's comment that the Drakes have lost their teleportation network, I see a Drake war between Xeris, Manus, and Liscora Salazar Palace. Action Kermit says the Drakes have lost Visible's network. As soon as Aaron unleashes the true power of the portal drawer, then Liscora will become the new teleportation hub. Hilera points out that to Yash that Xeris might not have a port anymore, depending because the landscape has been altered and Xeris was moved, and there was an explicit mention that Xeris' climate likely has changed. Spanner says, do we think that given white nulls are now quote unquote okay, what's his name? Ilveris' assistant guy is going to help Ilveris get a lot more money, especially since Ilveris has made such leaps in accepting nulls. Violet says Thika gained new stuff. Probably she felt young again. That would be the shaman of the Garmarsh, the old woman. I still don't understand that, Pat, if it was metaphorical or literal in that she feels young again. Maybe becomes a shamanic leader to all Nulls. That's a really cool idea. Edu says maybe Drakes are under too much pressure international to try and steal the new land. Perhaps. I would argue that the Drakes have never cared too much about international pressure and done whatever the fuck they wanted. Hermit, in response to Action Kermit's prior comment, could you read the rest? I got a phone call.
Oh, certainly. So you're saying I was thinking that maybe Terry helps upgrade the door, but I forgot that he forgot it existed. So he says I was thinking that maybe Terry helps upgrade the door, but I guess he forgot it existed in response to Action Kermit's comment about Liscor becoming the new hub of the portal network. Akugi also responded, saying that the only issue I see with that is that the walled cities will most likely try to steal it from her. It would not be the first time, Akugi. We had that with both Palace and the Five Families too. Tyrion tried to steal the door and almost did it successfully, so there might be something to that. Spanner is responding as well about Theka becoming a new shamanic leader to the Knolls. given that we are in a new age and certain people have lived for millennia, Naravia, the Red Blow String, maybe the rules of life have changed with the levels, you get more life. That's an interesting point. I think we've seen also that there are this is just me talking now beyond his Spanner's initial point here. We did have seen a few classes that they have, like Tarishi's young appearance or age and longevity was part of her class. So she could be even though she was a great granny for the Hernold tribe, she was looking as young as everybody else in the tribe. So that definitely has an effect on them. We might maybe see Theka be more like Tarishi and have that role as the great shaman. It seemed to be the same for Zuru, or I do not know how we actually ended up pronouncing his name, but fortunately, after this chapter, we don't have to remember how to say his name.
That guy walking.
Yep. And then we've got a lot of Knoll activity here, so that's we can still chime in with any thoughts that you guys have about them in general. Like I said, they have a couple of questions that we're just kind of merging here, just in general thoughts on where the Knolls go forward for Volume 9, or also just how you think that they were presented here in the finale. Violet had the comment earlier saying that they felt like making the focus of this volume. It's literally how Volume 8 began. Made it feel justified that this is how the volume ended, because it was the center point of the finale. So you got Agent Fog typing now, and again, anybody is welcome to chime in with their thoughts here. We can either read them, or if you just ping either me or Oshi, you can go ahead and address the whole chat yourself. We'd be really happy to hear from you. All right, Agent Fog.
Might as well. No, I'm just saying this. I love how Pirate gave us a glimpse of Null's true power, like with the three ghosts splitting the land, creating new lands, and now the Nulls in Volume 9 have something to look up to strive for. I hope that's a focus in Volume 9.
Yeah, just a reminder that they had people of great skill and power. Speaking of those three novels, so the Archmage actually did do something I'd forgotten. Geyer now has magic, guys. What do you think she's gonna do? Oh, and Yash, you want to speak?
Yeah, so it was about someone had made a comment earlier about how each volume was focused on one particular or one part of the world or one species, or there was a lot of exclusion. I feel like here, without the exclusion, the Knolls were included and the emphasis on Knolls was more, because I don't know if I'm making this up in my head, but somewhere it was written that they were travelers. And hmm?
Blue? What?
Oh, no, sorry. I forgot to mute myself. I was just nodding along. Go ahead. Yes.
But yeah, there
Oh, sorry.
by the way noted. In the chapter
So
with the storyteller.
yeah, they were the storytellers, they were the travelers, and that's why they had so much ancestral knowledge. They had so much memory. It almost reminds me of, our ancient civilizations who used to travel and tell stories about one civilization to the other and spread cultures. And I feel like Knolls were sort of the glue that held the world together way back when, and that's why so much importance was given to them when the world did come together now.
Ranaris, you have something to say?
I think with Yuri having magic, I think she's gonna be the biggest candidate for, major no magic user. Given that she has a lot of advantages due to being a paragon. We've seen her just like literally fight things with like one hand tied behind her back. So I think she's gonna be able to pick up magic. I don't want to make I know there was a meme going around long ago about Risha being like the next, casting a tier 8 spell or whatever, and being all those things. I think Gira is actually going to be those things in time. I think Gira is going to kind of carry forth that meme. Seems kind of silly at the moment, but that's kind of my thought. I think she's going to be really strong at magic.
So you don't think it's going to be Mersha the Great and Terrible throwing around those tier 8 spells? There's
So
no
maybe
competition.
Gyre or Paragon.
I don't think Mirsha is going to be throwing around tier 8 spells.
Nobody will be terribly disappointed in your view. This is sarcasm. Hopefully, it translates in the audio medium. That is a good point. Like that might be the null heavy hitter that replaces all the ones that we saw kind of pass away in this chapter. That was one of the big themes and big questions that we had is like who is going to step up, and we just seems like we got the big reveal of like who those new leaders are. Everybody from Feshi to Gyre to all the essentially POV nulls that we have come to know and love.
But
Yeah.
go ahead,
Didn't
Ryan.
make it.
Sorry, Yoshi. I know you like you have the whole point on like the nulls are gonna be crippled. I thought about this after that discussion, and I just wanted to say like I think this is kind of gonna be a transition from like the old powers to the new powers in no kind where we have some of these up and coming tribes that I feel like are gonna be able to kind of absorb some of the nulls that are kind of sort of tribeless right now and really grow quickly. Like Woven Blade Grass, I think the Damas Metal, those two are, I think, gonna be the prime replacements for some of these ones that kind of fell during the fight. So I don't know that the nulls are in such a bad spot because like the Woven Blade Grass tribe is probably gonna level because they follow the Herald of the Forest fighting Fistball, right? So they, in terms of, I think they are going to be in a bad spot in Israel, but they're also getting a foothold in other places. So I don't know that it's going to be quite as bad as maybe, initially thought.
Well, the balance of what my comment was isn't necessarily that they can't come back or that there isn't a possibility. It's that for a period of time while everyone struggles to try to replace what they've lost, grow back into what they were, they will be in a weakened state. Meantime, the Drakes have lost nothing. And they are not in a weakened state. And we all know how Drakes are a benevolent, kind society that never takes advantage of any weakness.
The Drakes lost Dragil.
Yes, that's a who just said that? You get a point for pointing out something funny.
Fun.
Okay. Spanner, you wanted to speak?
Moving on from your blatant sarcasm, I agree with what Edu said about. The Drakes did lose something. They lost the Festival network that they had placed underneath the Great Plains, and given that the quotes that were thrown around the audio chat, Knowles can now cast magic again freely, and they also have a book that literally teaches magic.
Which
Drakes-
still takes time to learn, to process, to grow into.
It does, and I'm not saying it doesn't, but it's a lot easier to learn magic when all you have to do is look at the book and it imprints it into your brain than having to spend money going to Wistrom or the mage school. And we
True.
also know that what's her name, Weatherfair chieftain who died, that one, she threw the light up towards the sky, so the Knolls, in theory, know that the Knoll Kingdom capital city is beneath the Great Plains, and that has how many magical books or tomes or whatever.
Okay. Again, all of these things are things that can be contested or developed over time. It still does not shake my conviction that this period of weakness that provides an opportunity, because you have to remember all it took was the revelation that the Drakes might sort of kind of have to fight the Nulls for every city to come out and commit the equivalent of genocide. They wiped out hundreds of small tribes. If it wasn't for Niers' actions, the Nulls would have been devastated. Like, nothing really has changed in that dynamic, and I think Pirate needs to directly address that if they plan to continue to develop the Nulls outside of singular tribes and zones and groups. Everything you guys keep mentioning are things that will help them in the future and will only help them if they do disengage from the Drakes and focus on other aspects. Let me just do a quick wrap up, and then Ranarus, you can tie us with Bo on this whole Null thing, and then we'll move on to the next topic. So, Hermit says, come to think of it, weren't Eld and Vale setting up some kind of yeah, Eldavin and Valeriso were setting up some kind of teleportation network. Geyer, Yash says Geyer, Paragon Powers versus Leonette's flawless attempt. Edu says Drake suck. Amen. Mr. Europe says, well, obviously not as much. Drake's lost their stored super weapons. True. They still have the ability to use said super weapons. It's that they lost a charge of said super weapons. The Drake cities have not lost the capability to recharge their super weapons. Hermit says Manus lost some high-ranking general. No, they didn't. Unless I completely fucked up. They didn't lose anybody high-ranking. Renner says, oh yeah, they do have the book. Yash says the Drakes also have their own Archmage turned against them. Valiterisa was never really a Drake Archmage. She was never accepted as one. She's just the Archmage of Israel. Ranner says Null Magic Academy went. True, that could happen. They could maybe we get Liscore to have like a magic school. That would be pretty cool. Violet says Liscore and Null Alliance, but yeah, it isn't enough. Agent Fog, in response to Ranner's comment about a Null Magic Academy, says Terry's School for Gifted Youngsters. And Edu says, okay, that was a lot of German, and I'm not reading that. Edu says, there is so much shit going around with the old gods. Is there even time to infight among each other or trying to steal land and stuff? The world was ending, and the Drakes tried to wipe the Nulls out. That's my response to you. Yash says there's heightened tension between the Wall Cities, Salazar Palace, and Atessia versus Manus, Xeris, and Festival. This is exactly what they did to the Nulls. True. Wormver, Kel says Wormver dropped on someone and squished them in Re the General. Oh, thank you, Kel. I forgot about the squishing. Important Drakes died. That's right. Hermit says in response to Kel's comment, he hasn't sung in a while. Can't blame him for being a little flat. Fuck you, man. Titan says, yeah, General Milka. Spanish says Wormver is immortal. He can do what he wants. And Ranners, tie us out for this.
Yeah, I think, Oshi, I agree that at the current stage of development, the Nulls do look very weakened. And more of a question from my side, but the Antinium, for a variety of reasons, mainly Aaron reasons, but Wormver and Kibbolch made an appearance and sided with the current Null survivors, effectively. And the Grand Queen of the Antinium had made an offer to the Woven Bladegrass tribe about, hey, if you want to take this land, you can move in. I don't know that they take that offer, but do you think they try to go make a deal with the Antinium of kind of like a defense agreement, right? It's like, okay, well, Drake's just tried to take our shit and kick our teeth in. We need somebody who's going to be able to balance these people out, because clearly, I mean, we thought they weren't our enemy. Like, we thought we were kind of okay, and then we aren't. They took our magic. They came into this meeting and then tried to annihilate us. So I think there's a much, just from like, you got to survive somehow. They could try to go up north and try to get an agreement with the humans, which I feel like it's less likely to balance the Drakes because of Blitzcore. But hey, you try and go get an agreement with the Antinium. So if you get attacked, it's Ant War 3, and then Nulls are not on the side of the Drakes, right? So I think that's kind of maybe a balancing coalition that could occur so that the no's aren't getting pushed out of Israel to the extent. Because the Drake did use their super weapons, and
You're right. This when we get to the next topic, which will be about the Antinium and the focus that we got on it, you'll see my opinion because I did come up with a solution to the problem. I just don't think that it's fair because I hate the Drakes and how they're getting away with all this shit. Before I wrap up, Mystical Pie says, going through all the cities, we know Atestia is already friendly to Nulls. In Pallas, maybe what Sarah said to Chaldean will change his mind. In Manus, Terry is talking to the Dragon Speaker. And in Salazar, we have Ilvris and the Liberal faction. That leaves us with Xeris and Visible remaining potentially hostile. Yar says the Nulls will probably give the Ants port access and help expedite the shipbuilding. Tina says a bit of a missed opportunity not to revisit the Antinium non-aggression pact, while 3 Prognigators, 1 Revelinator, and 2 Centinium were there right after a Drake attempt at genocide. Yeah, I mean, sure. I don't know what to tell you. There's a lot of missed opportunities and stuff. So, Blue Juice, let's take us into the. Do we have any questions that tie into the nulls from the discussion questions or participant stuff?
So we had several null questions in general. So we have. So did you want to talk about the nulls and their relationship to the Antinium, or do you want to see more null questions from the document that we got here?
We're talking about nulls, so null questions, right?
So we have a general question about where we think the remaining Plains Eye Nulls will go, both the ones who are like Marish and Yelloran, who actually turned on their tribe, and those who did not and got cursed at the end. And I will add an addendum there that a lot of those are non-combatants. This was the largest Null tribe, and pretty sure that there's a lot of little kids and babies that are part of those new white Nulls there as well. So keep that in mind before we start meting out vengeance against all the Nulls there. That's a lot of people. It is literally the largest Null tribe. And so where do we go now that they are no longer a tribe or a people, and they're all doom bearers?
This is true.
And also, why did it? I didn't get this clear in the text, so I'm going to ask this for everybody as well. Did Yelran and Marish actually become Doombearers as well? Did it affect the entire tribe, or only those who were on Zru's faction?
There's no clarity to that, but we'll see in the future. I expect that it truly did affect every survivor of the Plains Eye, and Plains Eye was a huge tribe, and we do know Bellavere is sort of an asshole. So of course her thought would be to make everybody afraid because then she could eat their fear. So
So
I'm
Kill
letting
had a
you.
response
Yeah.
about Yelran in particular, saying he's going to go stand in the Liskor town square and blind people with his. That's amazing. He has the anime protagonist glasses that do the shine, so that's fantastic.
I mean that sounds like Yellorin. I think Yellorin will end up in Liskor because it would be a good place. It's close to Palas, and his mathematical skills could be useful there from a technical standpoint. But also, I think he needs to be around someplace other than where he was. Akugi says, slightly unrelated, do you think the eyes of Palas Nulls will also be transformed into Doom Bearers? I don't think the eyes of Palas Nulls are considered Plains Eye Nulls, so it's not the same thing. Cal says Yellorin and Marish no longer really consider themselves Plains Eye. Zeru thought of them as traitors. Also, if Aaron's math lesson gets weird, imagine Oh, fuck me. Can you imagine Yellorin plus trying to teach math to everybody at the inn? Aaron would literally roadrunner the fuck out of there, go to the other side of the world, and say, "You're bad. Stay away from me."
Inconsistent. I don't know. It's weird. Half the time, it's made it sound like Aaron is actually a math prodigy, and that's why the math gets weird. The other half is Aaron has no idea what's going on, and that's why the math gets weird. I don't know which it is, if I'm honest with you. Sometimes she has unexpected depths, and math could be one of them.
Mersha had really good math. Like Kershaya was surprised. So I tend to think that Erin is quite good at it, but because she's Erin and doesn't know how to explain things very well, that's why shit gets weird.
I would agree. Spanner goes, I would argue it didn't affect them, Yellow and Marish, because they were technically traitors and therefore not members of the tribe anymore. Agent Fogg says, I think ironically, Bella made actual doom bringers. Plain's Eye brought doom on themselves. That's the whole reason she did it. Bookworm says she isn't good at math. I'm good with that. Well, she fought. Edu says, well, she taught the basics. That's it. Webwoven says, well, wait, isn't Lissum still looking for a teacher? Yerwilrun looking unemployed currently. That's true. On the
Bookworm, I
nose.
think, is hunting for the scene that proves that Aaron is bad at math. And I think, like you said, I think it's not just one scene. I think there are multiple scenes that where like one is presented as like she's awful at it, and then other times like she's presented as either like, yeah. Oh, Pisces had to check the answers. Yeah, that's fair. If Pisces is checking the answers, she's probably bad at math.
Yeah, I think
Bad at
she-
accounting. We know that much. She did not enjoy
Oh
accounting.
my
And
god.
so
I'm gonna go with she's bad at math, if only because you don't have to be good at math to be good at anything. You just don't. Except for, theoretical physics, which it's a whole nother thing. Bookworm says what there's this one scene, one moment, and he's looking for it. Pisces had to check the answers, yeah. Mr. Europe in response to Edu's, well, she taught the basics, that's it. Basics from our world that's substantially more advanced than what most in-worlders know. Does she know they're more advanced? Yelrune is going to turn into the Fagin of Liskor, Spanner says. And he also says, I'm an engineer. I very much beg to differ. Fine, engineers need math, whatever. Hermit says, which Erin gives people third and fourth chances, and it's justified because she's bad at math.
Aaron is the personification of that meme saying, I did the math. Boy, am I bad at math.
Okay. So here's a question connected to the nulls in the starting discussion chapter questions. After Calorus, how believable is it that Torishi has met her end underground in the Rashkar-filled ancient Null city? We never saw her die. We saw the light fade.
While we were waiting, Bookworm did actually provide the quote about about the math in this case. So it was from the interlude of Vampires and Fairlings. And so Oshi had asked the question again, if we believe that Torishi is actually dead, just based on the fact that Calrus did not bite the bullet. So if you do not see the body, skepticism. In fact, this is why we know Crossbow Stan is alive and kicking. So it's a very, very good workable theory.
Absolutely.
So we want to see how people feel about that. While they're doing that, we can read this math quote here. So are all Antinium good or as good as math as goodness, I am tongue tied. Are all Antinium as good at math as you, Bird? We do not use math. Math is boring. I was taught by Aaron Solstice. Instantly, Nears was distracted. Really? Tell me more. Why did this happen? Bird tilted his head. Nears slid sideways, but did not remonstrate him this time. Because she was teaching Mersha, Mersha did not want to learn. She taught me because I am a child and should know basic math. I did not want to learn either. Therefore, Erin told me she would cook me my favorite bird food ever if I solve her math questions. And we find out this is not a lot of math. So you solve the problems 4 days in a row for bird cookies. They were hard at the last part. Erin made Pisces check the questions because she did not know the answer, proving that teaching is hypocrisy. That is perfect.
I'm not reading Hermit's puns anymore. That's all you. Mystical Pie says she is definitely going to emerge with an army of subjugated Rashkar in 4 volumes. I'm with you. I'm ready for it.
So Hermit's actual pun is, I guess we shouldn't take Tarishi's death lightly.
Anyway, so it is an interesting point that we didn't see Tarishi's actual death. I would say the fading of the sunlight was pretty definitive because it is her central skill and ability, and she did make a sort of mini bargain with Bellavere in having the proof laid out. Let's see. Is there any other null questions before we move on?
I think we have at least one.
Oh, wait. Will Ilvris hire Stargrazer's promise when he goes to unearth the lost walled cities? Will we see a return appearance from Visible's Light, the rival team that was chasing them? Now that's an interesting question. Do you think Ilvris is going to start going through all of the Null tribes and picking up people who are Nulls to go dig up all those cities?
Oh, 100%. That's a very good question. I'll just chime in while people are getting their thoughts together there, but absolutely. He was already recruiting talent. I think the real question about Elvis is if the battle is going to have turned him to a pariah within his own family and his city based on the turncoatedness. Doesn't sound like it because the narrator is pointing out like, oh, that was a really nice backstab, rather than saying something like, oh, this is not a good idea. Drakes appreciate a good backstab. They're Drakes. But yeah, you would think that he would do that. Just the other question that they had is whether they would hire the competing team from Fisible, the one that Dragiel had been leading essentially. And well, he is very dead, so I think that part of the question might be different to resolve. But will he hire Stargazer's Promise? That sounds like a very good possibility. But maybe you want to have the Half Seekers go along just based on this chapter. They could use a little bit of seasoning.
So Bookworm says there will be a few interesting rumors floating around about Saren and Elvis. That's true. Well, that doesn't really answer the question. Spanner says, I honestly think that Elvis will be more a pariah because Aaron was straddling his chest and whispering into his ear. Tinaz says some of the walled cities were in the north, which I don't think he can just enter willy-nilly as a warlord, even if Magnolia is trying to make peace and Tyrion is a continent away. He may need to hire adventurers. Violet says, yes, more Half-Seeker Star-Null interaction. I'm all for that. I think it's a really interesting idea that not only that Ilvris will hire Stargazer's Promise, but more that there certainly will be like a gold rush attitude with people after Ilvris finds the first city on his map tour. Because once he finds it the first time, everybody will figure out that he's looking for these things because inevitably that's what happens. And he'll have to figure out a way to like chase off, and who better to use than the Half Seekers and these guys. It's gonna be a whole thing, and I love it, and I think it'll be an interesting through line in volume 9. Uh, I guess I don't see any more questions. Oh,
Morchan asked a very interesting question that's somewhat related.
mhm.
We have a few more comments coming in. Kel has at least one, and then Bookworm is just nodding along, saying that they agree with what we were saying there.
Okay.
But Morchan is asking, will the Bloodfeast writers be uncovered for public in the in-world? And it's a good point because we have Salkus in this chapter.
I don't think we've had any indication that the Raiders are involved in any of the stuff that's been going on. They've kept a low profile, more or less. I mean, Salkus, her presence is she's there, but other than her being there, what else connects her to the Blood Feast? There really doesn't feel like there's anything that connects her backwards, so why would she? I don't know. Okay. Kel says, I think Ilver single-handedly saved Salazar's worldwide reputation, invisibly being against militarily the attempted genocide of the Knolls. Agreed. Violet says also Sokka seems to want out. Mystical Pie says Salkus has the phone, but she hasn't really shown that in public. Spanner, Rio, what do you want to talk about Rio's phone?
No, I just meant to your comment that will
Right, but it's not it's not a public thing. That's what I was pointing out. There's no like the pieces are there for people to figure out, but there isn't any connection for people to tease out either.
I mean,
Morchan says one Blood Feast rider likes Ryoka and now was with the company of the inn. Yes, it is Blood Feast Raider, not Rider, but yeah, I take your meaning. That's an interesting question. Woo, that's a big one to think about. I I think we can move on. Let's do the.
We had
Can we
a
wrap up the
question
recording?
about
Let's
yeah, we had a
wrap up.
question about Noka and her demise. So I guess if we're gonna end with the Knolls, we might as well end with their nemesis being slain here. So
Uh-huh.
and the only question we had there was just if people were satisfied with the way that Noka went out, or did I think the way they have phrased it here is actually, did she live too long? Should she have lived longer, or did you feel her death was actually overdue?
Fuck her. I don't care. She's dead. Bookworm says Nulka, born in the darkness, died in the light. Poetic. Trustworthy Sean says, I was exhausted of Noka. I'm glad she died. Like, honestly, I'm glad she's dead. I think that's where it ends.
And this concludes the public discussion of 8.83 all the way through to the epilogue of Volume 8. See you guys next time.